Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cannabis Tech Talks, your weekly source for news and insights at the intersection of cannabis and technology. Shout out to our title sponsor, PolyScience, for supporting this podcast and helping us bring you the latest developments in this exciting field. I'm Patricia Miller, Executive Editor with Cannabis and Tech Today. So we're sitting down with Custom Cones USA co-founder Harrison Bard, and we're talking pre-rolls. So Custom Cones USA is a pre-roll supply company. They're covering everything from pre-roll cones to packaging, even to automation. So Harrison, before we dive into all that there is to know about pre-rolls, it's really one of the hottest sectors in the cannabis industry. I'd love to know a little bit more about you and your background. What were you kind of doing before you came in to Custom Cones USA?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Patricia. So before Custom Cones USA, I was working at Amazon up in Seattle. Both myself and other co-founder Frederick Rating, we were there and working at Amazon just in general corporate e-commerce business. We were doing like account management for large vendors on the Amazon platform. So e-commerce is our background, and that's helped us, build the leading pre-roll supply company and our whole, foundation of a really strong e-commerce store.
So you've got this really cool experience that you brought over from a mainstream industry and you're tying it into cannabis, which I think is always great to see. If you've got this background in technology, maybe you could give us some insight into what the current trends you're seeing in pre-roll tech.
hmm Yeah, so pre-rolls are one of the fastest growing segments of the cannabis market. They actually are the fastest growing segment right now. Compared to all other categories, pre-rolls were growing 12% year over year in the US and 38% year over year in Canada. The other fastest growing segments were edibles, beverages, and vapes, which were at 10%. And other segments were either declining or had, smaller growth. And before, the cannabis industry was mainstream, there wasn't really a lot of tools for manufacturing pre-rolls because there wasn't a need for it. There was, not a demand to make hundreds of thousands of pre-roll joints a month. So, the technology wasn't there. So a lot of the technology came out of the Amsterdam smoking cafes, the coffee shops. And that's where like the knockbox came from, which was just a really simple vibrating base where you put the cones in, they fill from the top. Those type of tabletop machines work great for companies as they're scaling up. And then typically where we recommend companies switch to automation is around 50,000 to 100,000 joints sold per month.
Hmm.
Otherwise, those tabletop machines work great for companies, as they ramp up their demand to get there. And then there are pros and cons of the automated pre-roll machines. So sometimes even if you are at those higher levels and you want to maintain certain quality standards, as well as have a really diverse range of pre-roll products, we may not even recommend you use automated pre-roll machines.
Hmm. So
Yeah.
how are you seeing Custom Cones USA sort of differentiate itself in the market? I imagine you've got competitors maybe offering kind of similar services.
hmm Yeah, so I think the way we differentiate ourselves is we're not actually an equipment manufacturer. What we do is we find the best machines, we test them, we work with the manufacturer, hand in hand, giving them feedback. A lot of these equipment manufacturers are startups themselves because, like I said, there wasn't a need for this type of equipment before. So it's not like there's, big engineering firms making these. It's a lot of mom and pop type companies building these type of machines in their garage and then slowly scaling up. So what we really do well compared to our competition is we're really unbiased. We find the best machines, either these companies approach us or we find them at trade shows or just on the internet. And then we go and we really investigate them. We get samples of the machines. We test them here. We work with like a beta customer, a really close client of ours, get them a machine for free, have them test it, give feedback. And then we've helped the manufacturers of the pre-roll machines that we sell a ton in terms of R&D, giving them feedback on what works the best. So if you're coming to our website and you see a machine on our site, you could have the confidence that it's like an unbiased perspective and we really have confidence that it's a great quality machine.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's pretty unique. Most of the time it's wholesale, what can we get at the lowest price? And a lot of times it's not consumer tested, and you're certainly not going to find that kind of commitment from the company selling them. So I think that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're an engineering company and you're building a machine, you're gonna sell the moon. Essentially, you're gonna tell people what they want to hear. And a lot of the times they're developing this technology for the first time. And with any machine, it goes through iterations. The first version is not the best. And so, by working with us, you have a little bit more confidence, and we'll tell you at what stage the machine's at, how many, iterations or versions are there now, how many installations. Whereas if you just go directly to a manufacturer, they're going to try to sell you the machine no matter what, because that's their core competency and that's what their whole business is revolved around. Also, our sales team is not commissioned, so we really don't have an incentive to sell you the most expensive thing. A lot of the times we'll talk people down. We'll say, you're just starting out, you're in a new market, you really don't need an automated pre-roll machine. Whereas an automated pre-roll machine company is just going to sell you it no matter what, because that's their one item. So we take a really consultatory approach, really educational, and we're not incentivized to sell you the most expensive thing. We want to sell you what's right for you at that stage of your business, what scale you're at, and then help you scale responsibly as your business in that market continues to grow.
I'm sure a lot of people really appreciate that insight.
Yeah.
So I'm always kind of interested to hear, how people decided to get into the cannabis space. So I know you've got this technology background. Was it seeing an opening where you thought you could apply your skills, or was it like a convergence of passion and opportunity for you?
Yeah, definitely a passion. Both myself and my co-founder Frederick, we're cannabis consumers. We love the plant. And so it's like a perfect mix between our technology background and then originally what we were doing before CustomConesUSA.com was creating a cannabis-based paper product. And that's where we learned all about paper and cones and pre-rolls. So CustomConesUSA.com, it's kind of a long story, but this was a side project. Originally, our main goal or our main business when we quit Amazon was to make a weed infused paper. So like the same way a blunt wrap is tobacco paper, or now a hemp wrap is a hemp based, blunt wrap, we were trying to make a cannabis based paper. So we learned all about paper making, paper science. Then we actually invented this cannabis based paper. We went to manufacturers and they said, all right, this is cool, but it needs to be a cone. Otherwise, I can't make joints with it. A cone is like the essential component of making a pre-roll. So we're like, okay, how do we make a cone? And then we went down a huge rabbit hole and then eventually started CustomConesUSA.com at the same time of this cannabis-based paper company. We were licensed in Washington producing this cannabis paper for a little bit when CustomConesUSA.com just exploded. This was in 2017, 2018, and that's when pre-rolls went from an afterthought of where producers and processors were just putting trim and shake into a pre-roll to the shift where this is actually a product category that consumers care about, and the quality went up, price went down, and pre-rolls became a mainstay in the industry.
Wow. So are you still working on your cannabis infused paper?
Yeah, so we're still working on it in the background. There's a lot of challenges in terms of the capital expenditure, the machines to make that type of product is really expensive. And given the lack of interstate commerce, you'd have to set this type of facility up in every state. So yeah, so in the background, we've been doing research, trying to come up with other items that could help bridge that gap until federal legalization, where this type of technology and the capital expenditure to produce this type of product makes sense and for the volumes that you would need.
That's very cool. So you're talking pre-rolls with people every day. What are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing kind of impacting the pre-roll sector?
I mean, the biggest challenges that people face is they just don't know where to start. A lot of people getting into the cannabis industry, maybe they used to be in the restaurant industry, or they used to be into real estate, or they've never started a business before. They just love cannabis. They've, been involved in, the underground cannabis industry for years, and now they're starting a business. So a lot of people don't necessarily have formal business experience, let alone actual manufacturing experience. So it's not just the cannabis experience isn't enough, even if you've been around the plant and the industry for a long time. You're now segueing into a manufacturing business. So you need to understand all the steps that a manufacturer would take, all the quality controls that, a food manufacturer or like a beer or wine company is going through. And then when you look at the tobacco industry, they are so strict and regimented in terms of their manufacturing and quality control. And cannabis is the exact opposite. So with tobacco, how they produce, cure, and then run that through a machine, they're super scientific and there's like no variation. Whereas in cannabis, people want to have 20 different strains and they don't have like the scientific background to understand like what is the particle size, what's the moisture content,
Mm-hmm.
and how do all of these variables affect the manufacturing process, let alone how to set up an efficient manufacturing process and build a team around that. There's a lot of turnover in the cannabis industry, so that presents some challenges as well.
Those are really important points. I think when you get a manufacturing license as a retailer or just as a manufacturer, it's not like that comes with training. It's
Mm-hmm.
usually you're paying a fee and you're getting the license, and then it's free reign. And of course, there's compliance issues and regulatory concerns, but it's not like you're trained in how to do this effectively. And something that I see in emerging markets is a lot of inconsistency with the pre-roll products they're putting out. And particle size you mentioned, I think, is huge.
Mm-hmm.
People just are inclined to put a lot of really finely processed shake and particulate into these products when actually you need a variable particle size to get that consistent draw so the air can flow through and you don't get a floppy joint and you don't get one that's too tight. And there's
Exactly.
there's more complexity to it than I think you would imagine.
Yeah. So we're not just a pre-rolled cone company. We're a team of pre-roll experts, and we partner with our clients to be a part of their team. So we not only sell the pre-roll cones, but we sell all the machines. And we don't just sell the cone filling machines. We sell the grinder, which is where the entire pre-roll process starts, which the next step we always recommend is sifting. Some people skip that step, but that's the crucial step where you're able to hone in on that particle size, make sure you're not putting in too much small particulate, a bunch of dust, which could cause the pre-roll to clog and have a really poor draw. And then, of course, we have all the expertise on the different cone filling machines, all the way up from the small tabletop ones to the full automation. So, yeah, we're walking customers through particle size. And what they're not thinking about is the moisture content. And also, there's two components, there's the moisture content of the flower and then water activity. Sound super similar, but they're actually two different measurements where if you're really sophisticated enough, you could have these analytical pieces of equipment to measure those. If you're at that scale, if you're using an automated pre-roll machine, we definitely recommend you invest in that technology and invest in your workforce and teach them how to use these machines in a scientific way, because you should always be measuring the moisture content and water activity of your flour before you grind it to make sure it's at the stage or at the levels that will grind properly for what you're trying to do, and then run it through a sifter to get to a particle size that is going to achieve what you want. There's a couple different reasons why particle size is important. One, like we mentioned, if the particles are too small, that could cause the pre-roll to clog and have really poor airflow. And then in general, having a uniform particle size increases the flowability of the material. This is something that when we were doing research, we saw in the pharmaceutical industry. So when, let's say, like an ibuprofen manufacturer is creating that type of pill, they did a study and saw that if the granulate, the powders, the ibuprofen powder, is a uniform particle size, that flows through all of the machines and into the capsule pressing machine much faster, more evenly.
Mm.
Whereas if there's a variable particle size, those particles will agglomerate or clump together and then move slower or more efficiently through that process. So tuning in the particle size is really important, not only for quality, but for the efficiency of your manufacturing process as well.
Yeah, killer point. And if you're putting all of this energy and effort into making really consistent quality pre-rolls, another thing I see retailers kind of forget about is how to display these products properly, how to showcase them in a way that's like enticing, because you lay a plastic tube on a shelf and it's not as alluring as it could be. So is that something that
Mm-hmm.
you're also working with your clients on?
Yep. Yep. The whole cycle from all the machines to the actual paper products. And then we also specialize in pre-roll packaging and then retail displays and other merchandising tools. So yeah, you're right. A lot of times some stores design themselves like an Apple store where it's really minimalist and they have a shelf. And like you said, they just put a couple tubes down on it. That limits the amount of shelf space because you're going for that minimalist type of look, which, if that fits the branding of your dispensary, you kind of have to do that. But then you need to make sure that you're displaying those pre-rolls nicely. So we have a couple different merchandising options, different POP type of displays or other type of pre-roll displays to help hold those tubes, add some more visual signage. And then in the other side, you'll see stores with like the flat wall in the background. And a lot of the times they just have buckets like you could pick up from Uline that hook into the slat wall, and the pre-rolls are kind of stored below the waist level in these buckets. They're normally not even clear, and they're there pretty much just for storage. It's not like the consumer could see them.
Mm.
So what we've developed was a clear acrylic display dispenser that goes onto the slat wall, moves the pre-rolls more eye level, and that helps with sell-through because the customer is able to see it. And then different dispensaries come up with incentives with the pre-roll companies that are selling it. So if you want this marquee display that's right by the cash register eye level, give us a deal or run a promotion, you do a discount. And so it's a win-win for both the retail store and the brand that's selling the pre-roll because it really increases the sell-through rate.
That's smart. Harrison, we're going to take a quick sponsor break, and when we get back, we'll talk about more pre-roll tech.
Every cultivator knows that facility design can make or break your grow, so why not choose the team with over 16 years of experience in the industry? Cerna Cultivation Technologies provides floor plan and architectural services, comprehensive HVACD equipment, lighting, and benching, and so much more, all within your budget. It's time to grow your way. Go to Cerna.com, that's SURNA.com, to learn more.
Welcome back. We're sitting here with Harrison Bard from Custom Cones USA, and we're talking about pre-roll tech. So I want to kind of look at what your company is doing right now. Is there current technology or products that you're like most excited about to kind of be bringing to your clients?
Yeah, so the biggest trends we're seeing, and then the technology solutions we're trying to bring to market to help clients meet that demand, is in the infused and connoisseur style pre-rolls. So that segment, infused is pretty obvious, but connoisseur is a bit of a catch-all term that's used to describe premium type of pre-rolls or larger formats, like anything bigger than a gram or anything with a fancy tip like a glass, wood, or ceramic tip is getting lumped into that connoisseur category. So that infused and connoisseur category is what's driving almost all the growth in the pre-roll segment. In Canada, that segment's up over 1,400%. Pre-rolls make up almost twice the market share in Canada as they do in the US, so super, super popular up there. And then in the US, that infused connoisseur segment's up 22% year over year. So we've been developing and bringing to market a lot of premium tipped items, both in cone and tube shape. So we have glass and ceramic tip cones. We're also coming out with wood tip pretty shortly, and those are available in the different types of rolling papers as well as hemp wrap. And then we have the tube format as well, which is just non-tapered, just a pure cylinder. They smoke differently, different customer preferences. You could also typically fit more flower in the tube shape one, given the geometry. And those are a little bit more difficult to fill. So in our King Cone pre-roll filling machine, we have special cartridges and attachments to make those tubes fill properly. So that's been a lot of exciting technology and tools that we've been bringing to the market. There's special attachments that hold the tubes properly when you use a cone filling machine. When you lift up the cartridge, the cones don't fall out given the tapered shape. But when you're using tubes, they'll just slide right through. So special tooling had to be developed. And then the cone geometry helps funnel the flower down when it's packing and packs nicely all the way at the end. And so you don't get that loose floppy tip. But when there's a tube shape, the geometry is less friendly and you'll get some more like air bubbles in there. So we have special tamping tools at varying heights and things that you could adjust to make sure you get a nice dense pack from all the way to the bottom to the top. And then there's also folding technology coming both on the automated side and on the tabletop side. So a lot of people assume that the more holes on a pre-roll machine, the more output you'll be able to make. It's a little bit of a misconception. The bottleneck in your pre-roll manufacturing process isn't going to be in how big your machine is and how many cones you could fill at a time. It occurs later downstream in terms of taking those cones out. If you're weighing them, that's a really slow process. If you have to fix the weight, super slow. And then tamping, twisting, or folding is really slow. So it honestly is kind of a bit of a different path, but having multiple smaller machines is better. That way you could have more people and more cycles going through your manufacturing process at once. But then we've been developing folding technology in our pre-roll press, also called the fill and fold machine, where after your pre-rolls are filled, there's a tool with different rods of different shapes. There's 3 different ones for each step of the folding process, but it helps you tamp down the top, crimp the tops of the cones, and then give it a flat finished fold. And then they come out of the machine totally ready to go. That saves pre-roll manufacturers a ton of time. That's one of the most time consuming, and honestly, employees hate it too, taking pre-rolls out and twisting them one at a time. So that's been really exciting to see as well.
Yeah, I imagine. And do you think the growth you talked about, especially in Canada and more so now in the USA, is that something that's coming from a more mature, more educated consumer base, as they get more familiar with the product and all the different ways they can consume? Do you think those premium luxury products are a byproduct of that more educated consumer base?
I think it's really driven by just the core cannabis consumer. So the segments that increased the most, as I said, pre-rolls was number one, and then the ones right behind it was edibles, drinks, and vape pens. And then all of the segments that were declining, and some of them were declining, all of them in double digits, some of them up to like 30% declines or not, if not more, were topicals, tinctures, and capsules. And those product types is what I would bucket into like a wellness category. So you see a lot of brands saying, we're going to attract like the canna curious consumer. We're trying to make a wellness product. And while that is nice, and there definitely is a ton of medicinal benefits to cannabis, that's not your core consumer, or at least not the core consumer in the overall cannabis market. Your core consumer is a recreational consumer. And so the recreational type of products is what's really been exploding. Flower, pre-rolls, vapes, edibles, that's, just a traditional recreational product versus those wellness products. And so these infused and connoisseur type of pre-rolls are going, targeting that type of customer, your regular user, your person who's looking for higher THC numbers, which unfortunately they don't really care, or they're not educated well enough about terpene content and the quality of the flower. They're just going for high THC numbers. So that's where the infused pre-rolls are really dominating. And as the price of cannabis has come down, the price of an infused pre-roll is almost equal to what a regular pre-roll was just a couple years ago. So it makes sense for the customer to get that higher potency product with more flavor compared to just a regular type of pre-roll.
Great insight. I appreciate that. When you're thinking about the future of the pre-roll technology sector, what does it look like to you?
So the future is definitely moving to infused pre-rolls for sure. We're coming out with a white paper that we're doing in collaboration with Headset that should be coming out in just a couple weeks. And so there's some really interesting data in there, one of which shows that infused pre-rolls are making up almost 50% of sales in certain states.
Wow.
So would not be surprised to see that continue to rise. If you're a pre-roll manufacturer and you're not making an infused pre-roll, I think it's a big eye-opener that you really need to get into that segment. So future prediction, infused pre-rolls might make up 60, 70, if not more % of all pre-roll sales.
Wow.
And then also multi-packs. So multi-packs is a huge trend as well. In 2018 and 2019, the single one pack made up about 72% of all pre-roll sales nationally. By 2020, that drops to 63%. And now so far in 2023, only 52% of all pre-roll sales are that one pack. And that's with multi-packs eating into that market share. So we're seeing 5 packs being the second biggest segment. That's now making up 20% of pre-roll sales. And then the second most popular one is going to be like a 10 pack, which is now at 7% of sales. And back in 2018, 2019, it was less than 1/3% of all pre-roll sales.
Wow. Yeah, that is some rapid growth. Interesting.
Yeah. We're also seeing the size of the pre-roll get smaller. So the one pack is typically that 1 gram king size pre-roll. And now we're seeing the 0.7 gram pre-rolls getting more popular, 84 millimeter. And then of course the little mini dog walker pre-rolls are getting super, super popular.
Yeah, I like those myself. Well, so where can our listeners go to find out more information about Custom Cones USA and maybe follow your journey, Harrison?
Yeah, customconesusa.com. We have a great knowledge center with a ton of blogs and videos. That's really what we pride ourselves on, is being pre-roll experts. We're always coming up with product innovation. So just check our products. If you sign up for our newsletter, you'll always get alerts of when new items are coming out or when we're running deals. And then always, subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all of our videos. And then we'll also email that out in our newsletter too when we come out with really great blogs and videos.
I love it. Well, thanks for sharing your knowledge with us, Harrison. I learned a lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. To all of our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about emerging cannabis technologies, be sure to like this podcast and subscribe to Cannabis Tech Talks. You can pick up the most recent issue of Cannabis and Tech Today on Barnes & Noble newsstands across the country, or grab a copy for free on canatechtoday.com. This podcast is produced in part by Pretty Easy Podcasts. Visit prettyeasypodcast.com if you're looking for professional production quality at an affordable rate. Until next time, stay elevated, and thanks for listening.
Hey, hello, I'm Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. Wait, you didn't think people would know who I am? Durachill. This is Durachill. This is Durachill. This is Durachill. No, hey, I don't talk like that. You want me to sell this? Buy it. Try Durachill or else. If you want something really nice in your laboratory, buy Durachill. You can't go wrong.